He is the founder of Hoops HQ, and we see him all throughout CBS Sports and, of course, the Turner coverage of the men's NCAA tournament. How are you, Seth? Good to see you.
I'm doing all right, Rich. I'm a little bleary-eyed, not sure what time zone I'm in,
Best.
but as I have often said, I know you can relate. I haven't worked a day in my life, and I'm not breaking the streak today.
I appreciate you saying that. Before we start, I know you're focused on the men's tournament, but here in Los Angeles, California, where I know you're based, JuJu Watkins going down last night, and it's an ACL, and now we're wondering when she's even going to come back. Next year's women's season is even roiled by this news here. I'll just give you the floor with your 2 cents on her and what this means. Seth?
It's so heartbreaking. It's just so heartbreaking on so many levels. Not to go right to sort of the crass business part of it, but I mean the women's game is at such an inflection point, and people so much looking forward to this tournament, and she's the number one reason why. I mean, she's incredible. And the season that she's had and what she's done for the team and just the way that she transcends not just women's basketball, but sports. I mean, just a genuine breakout star. And just on a personal level, you're so heartbroken for her. You know, you think about over the summer and the fall and all the work that goes into being as great as she is that none of us ever see or will ever see. And then you get to the point where the payoff is coming and this happens. It's just heartbroken for her, but it's that's life and that's sports. So what can you do?
I hear you. And I mean, you basically summed it up where it's heartbreak, it's awful, it's terrible. And, maybe USC can utilize, right? And for now, hey, we're more than just JuJu. She's our leader, but let's do it for her. Like that is a significant, powerful, potent weapon in its own right, potentially.
Yeah, yeah. And they certainly did that last night, but you just wonder when you get to the later rounds, they're gonna miss her. It's just it sucks. It just royally. We kind of went through that in the men's side during the ACC tournament when Cooper Flagg went down against Georgia Tech. It looked awful. I mean, his foot bent the way it's not supposed to bend, and they took him out of there in a wheelchair, and you just didn't know. And Duke is obviously very fortunate that he's okay, but the sport and the tournament are okay because stars drive this thing, and she's as big. She is as big of a star as there is in all of sports.
Agreed.
Any sport. Anywhere.
Absolutely. Seth Davis here on the Rich Eisen Show. Again, the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Hoops HQ, and we watch Seth all throughout the men's NCAA tournament when he's on. I can't figure out which network you're on every now and then, but obviously CBS is your home. Let's just jump into it right now. The most impressive team through the first weekend of the men's NCAA tournament is
Easily Duke. And in fact, I felt this way about Duke for about a month now. And a lot of the numbers bear this out. Your favorite website, Ken Palm, the numbers that Duke have been putting up in their metrics and their efficiency numbers are historic. I think there may only be one other team, and that may have been 2015 Duke, if I'm not mistaken, in the history of that site, which goes back to 1997. And people can say, well, the ACC. Couple things. First of all, that's baked into the numbers, the level of your competition. That's number one. Number two, hugely underrated how hard it is to beat even a team like Wake Forest by 35 points. I mean, it's one thing to win the game and win it convincingly, but you constantly beating teams by 20, 30 points. And then they had a game against Illinois, which last I checked is not in the ACC, Madison Square Garden, late February. They beat Illinois by 47 points, biggest loss in the history of the Illinois program. And Illinois 8 days later went to your favorite town, Ann Arbor, and beat Michigan by 20 points. Michigan's in the Sweet 16. So people have been, if you can say they're underrating Duke, I think they've been underrating Duke. And, Baylor's obviously not a great team. That's why they were an 8 seed. But you saw in that second round game what Duke is able to do. And the differentiator really with this team, Rich, is their defense. They've been one of the top defensive teams in the country, and they're also the tallest team in the country. So you not only have 7'2" Common Malawach at the rim, and Cooper Flagg is a great help side defender. But you've got a point guard at the point of attack. Sion James is 6'6", and Tyrese Proctor is 6'4", and Con Knipple 6'7". So they have size, length all around, which means they can survive a bad shooting game. But when they shoot it as well as they did against Baylor, they're literally unbeatable.
Yeah, a couple things there. First of all, you're right. KenPom is my favorite site because I checked with my doctor to see if KenPom was right for me. So, but that was years ago.
You are the side effects.
You know what? Exactly. But outside of that, our friend Jay Billis called Cooper Flagg the greatest freshman Duke's ever had a couple weeks ago. Yeah, my eyebrows raised as well when he said that. And there is some chatter, amongst fans that this is potentially the best Duke team ever. Where do you stand on that sports talk radio type of subject, Seth?
Well, I guess we can't. It's actually an interesting question because I guess we can't even have the conversation for another couple of weeks, right? Like, but do you have to? Isn't that kind of silly though? Like, if you lose one game, does that make you not? Like, some people could argue the 1999 Duke team with Elton Brand, Trajan Langdon, William Avery, Corey Maggette, that was the best Duke team. They lost twice that season, but one of them happened to be in the national championship game to UConn in a one possession game. So, and again, a lot of this can be analyzed in the data. I think there's probably a case to make, like when you said about the strongest freshman, the guy that popped into my head is Zion Williamson. If you look at the numbers that he put up, now they lost in the Elite Eight. So, how do you factor that in? But just the fact that we're talking about, given the history of this program, that it's even a conversation should tell you where. Now, that doesn't say they can't be beat, Rich, but I'll say, I always kind of start with, if every team in the tournament plays their A game, if they play as well as they can play, who's the best team? I thought it was Duke for a while, and it's why I picked them on the selection show to win the championship.
Who's the most dangerous team in the Sweet 16 in your estimation? And that means we're not talking about them. We don't think they can win it all, but look out because there's a glass slipper because it's March Madness.
Well, if you're talking about the sort of not talking about them, that I was going to say Florida. Obviously, people are talking about Florida, but I don't know that we're talking enough about Houston, both in terms of what this team can do and historically. Kelvin Sampson took over the job at Houston in 2015. The last time before that day that Houston had won a game, Rich, a game in the NCAA tournament was 1984 when Hakeem Olajuwon won. He wasn't even Hakeem yet; he was still Hakeem. That's how down Houston was. Now, it takes more than a coach, so they had unbelievable support and being able to build the Fertitti Center and getting their facilities up to snuff. And now they've joined the Big 12, so they've turned it into a power conference program. But he's been to an Elite Eight, he's been to a Final Four. Last year they were in the Sweet 16 against Duke, lost their All-America point guard Jamal Shead in the opening minutes, still almost won the game, lost in the Sweet 16. So you just kind of wonder, like, one of these coaches and programs that's constantly knocking on the door. How about this? Everyone talks about their defense, their toughness, offensive rebounding, all important things. They are number one in the country in 3-point percentage. And they brought in, I mentioned Jamal Shead, who's now in the NBA, Rich. They brought in a point guard from Oklahoma, Milos Uzan, which is not only really hard to follow someone like Jamal Shead, but Jamal Shead had been in that program for a number of years, and the previous point guards have been in that program a number of years. So it was kind of a double whammy. And then Uzan, by the way, got hurt in the summer, so he missed a lot of the preseason stuff. Took him a minute to get going, but he's been playing as well as any point guard in the country this season. So Houston absolutely has a legit, good job beating a really good Gonzaga team. They've got another team ahead in Purdue. Everybody plays somebody good in the Sweet 16, but make no mistake about it, Houston's absolutely good enough to win this thing.
And then you mentioned Florida, not as a dangerous team. Oh, how about Arkansas? I mean, would this not be such a Coach Cal thing to show up in Arkansas, have the regular season that he had, the start that he had, and make the Final Four anyway as a 10 seed? Don't you think?
Such a Coach Cal thing, right? Lose games you're supposed to win games you're supposed to lose. And that's if you do it for as long as he has. And look, I mean, Calipari, I took plenty of shots at him this season. I thought he got an unfair rap at Kentucky, but first of all, let's start with that, by the way. I mean, how about giving him the credit? He didn't get fired at Kentucky. He could still be there. but he had the foresight and the humility to say, you know what, I need a change. Now, he obviously wasn't going to go just anywhere. So he went into a really good situation because John Tyson, the billionaire of Tyson Foods, said, "We'll give you." It's all about NIL money, as you well
It's a
know.
lot of chicken, Seth. That's a lot of chicken.
A lot of chicken.
There's
Yes,
a
yes.
lot
I
of
love
chicken.
who doesn't love chicken?
Please.
Who doesn't love chicken?
Yes.
But just to have that wherewithal to make that move, that's pretty impressive. Probably didn't get enough credit for that. But look, I took plenty of shots at him like everybody else, and he deserved it because they were playing terribly. And you wondered about his roster construction. You wondered about, is he playing a modern style and with the analytics and everything? And then they lose their freshman point guard, Boogie Flan. They're 0-5 in the SEC. Then they go 1-6 in the SEC, and he's walking into Rupp Arena to face a Kentucky team that has it rolling. And what does he do? He wins the game. And ever since then, they've been off and running. And I guess what I'm driving at, Rich, is they wouldn't have made this turnaround if he really and truly did make it all about him. Like he's out there and he's an easy target. He's like a piñata. We all take our shots at him. But inside that locker room, you have to keep the belief of your players. And they won't give you that belief if they think you want to make it all about you. And so I give him enormous credit for holding that program and that locker room together. And by the way, their leading scorer and rebounder, Duke Thero, hasn't been playing. He's got a hyperextended knee. He may be able to get back in the lineup this week. They back Boogie Flan. So the Arkansas team that's going to take the court against Texas Tech might not be the same Arkansas team we've been seeing the last few weeks. It's a great, great story.
Yeah, that's going to be in San Francisco later on this week. I guess the most Coach Cal thing wouldn't just make the Final Four. He'd make the final game against Kentucky. Now that, because that's in the ether. I mean, I know that's unlikely, but that's in the ether still. Like it is possible. So would a matchup between my alma mater and Michigan State for the right to go to the Final Four, which would be kind of sick. But, obviously there's a big but with Michigan taking on Auburn first up, coming up in Atlanta. What are this one's for me. What do you think the odds are of that? Like, what's Michigan's chances here to keep moving on against Auburn, Seth?
They have a solid chance. I mean, I would pick Auburn maybe to win the game, but Auburn's had kind of an interesting season, Rich. One thing is, not said enough about Auburn. They only have one player on this team. Tahad Pettiford is a freshman point guard, comes off the bench. He's really good. He's the only top 30 recruit on this team. Everybody else was either under the radar or they transferred in. I mean, Janai Broom spent his first two college seasons at Morehead State. And they got guys transferring in from a D2 school, junior college, mid-major schools. So they've had that chip, but then they were just blasting everybody. I mean, they lose 3 out of 4 games coming into the tournament, and they were still the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. That's how far ahead of everybody they were and they've been. And, people don't like, folks like me talk about this SEC conference being historically great. Well, they got 7 teams in the Sweet 16. So again, your buddy Ken Pom maybe had that right too. But my point is that they carried that mantle as this sort of aura of invincibility through the SEC, through the season. And I think it wore on them. I think they lost that edge, that competitive edge of, hey, we're a bunch of mid-major dogs who don't belong here. Like, it's kind of hard to make that argument when you're the favorite. And, Janai Broom, for as brilliant as he's been, the last few weeks has been a little kind of mortal. And that can get you, through a second round win over Creighton. But now you're in the later rounds. The thing about Michigan that I really respect, Rich, is this team has developed a physicality and a toughness that they didn't have early in the season. And that's a credit to Dusty May. Now, their guard play is still going to be, a little bit of a concern. Their turnovers is definitely a concern. Part of the reason why they commit so many turnovers is they have the ball in the hands of Danny Wolf all the time. 7-foot Jewish guy, by the way, Rich. That's a win for the tribe. There weren't a lot of those at summer camp. There weren't a lot of those at Trails End and Equinox. But they're kind of nasty. They've developed the physical. When they beat Maryland in the Big Ten tournament on that buzzer beater from Trey Donaldson, they crushed them on the boards. So Auburn is now going to have to deal with Michigan's physicality. Now, Michigan's going to have to take care of the ball. They were the worst turnover team in the Big Ten, and you don't want to be that against Auburn because that's like an automatic points at the other end of the court. But they're in the game for a reason. They've played really, really good basketball. Obviously, we're terrific during the Big Ten tournament, and you've got to feel like you got a chance in this one, legitimately.
Yeah. Bruce Pearl does look like a guy who I would try to beat in intercamp games, though. And it's interesting,
Yes.
Danny Wolf and Bruce Pearl on Shabbat night, that is big for the tribe as well, Seth.
That's right. But we also got Todd Golden is in the tribe, and of course John Shire.
That's right.
So
look at
if
us.
if all three of them get there, we have a million.
Close. Before I let you go, Seth, you know how it works in sports. If you got some guy who's controversial, puts his stuff out there, is a little bit irascible, and you win, you don't talk about it. And Danny Hurley, when he shoves Cam Spencer in a national championship game, that's just kind of funny and quirky, when you win back to back. Now we're talking about Danny Hurley's comportment again, having been bounced in the round of 32. But he's right. I mean, when he said they went out with honor, certainly the way that they played against Florida, that was you knew they'd be a tough out. That said, we're talking about Danny Hurley's comportment again. Where do you stand on this subject, Seth?
Well, it's all in the soup, isn't it? I'll start with this. I think he did a really, really good job with this team. This notion that they were going to win 3 in a row is just, I never bought into it because, they lost 4 starters. Now, you had to wonder because the previous year they lost 5 of their top 8 players from the first championship team and were able to win it again. So you sort of had that latitude, well, let's see. So I never ranked them. I think I started off in the preseason, my first AP ballot, Rich, maybe had them 10th, but I think they may have been 2nd or 3rd in the poll. So I was always like, let's maybe wait and see, but still 10th is pretty high. And Danny, regrettably, really fell into that, especially in Maui when they lost those 3 games, like just expecting to pick up where he left off the season before. And I think once he got back into kind of coaching these guys, and then they had a major injury with freshman Liam McNeely, Alex Caravan, a lot of people thought he would be like a first-team All-American. He was a good player, but he wasn't that. So they had a lot to work through. But at the end of the season, they were right there. And when you saw them against Florida, it was like, that's a Danny Hurley coach team. They took it right to that number 1 seed. So I love his vulnerability. I love his authenticity. You saw him getting emotional. Again, those players wouldn't play for him the way they do if he made it all about him. But there is definitely another side to that coin. We can say it's part of what makes him great. When you walk off the court and you're saying to Baylor, I hope they don't screw you like they screwed us, what you're saying is that Florida didn't deserve to win. That's not respecting your opponent, and that's not respecting the game. And Dan has a regrettable tendency to fall into that when he gets frustrated. And again, it's part of what makes him great, but it's part of stuff like that you can't defend. And so I don't like the way that he treats referees a lot of times. I think that, frankly, the NCAA and refs in general need to constantly look at the way that coaches talk to officials and act. I think they've gotten better in that regard. He won 2 national championships. And so the only thing worse than not having Danny Hurley, the only thing better than not having Danny Hurley as your coach is having him as your coach because he's going to win. And so he's a larger than life character at this point with a lot of rough edges. But I'll say this about him, Rich, he's no phony. There are a lot of phonies out there, and no one will ever accuse Dan Hurley of being phony. We got to give him that.
He is original. There's no question. Seth, thanks for the time. Greatly appreciated. Hoops HQ is a great spot for everybody to just dive into everything that's happening right now.
Yes, sir. Hoops HQ. And by the way, we're the transfer portal opened yesterday. So for guys like me and Hoops HQ, like that's ratings gold for the media, Rich. That's good stuff. So.
Yeah, I know.
Lot to stay on top of.
I hear you, and we're up against it, to use a radio term. Otherwise, we dive into that. It's so stupid to open a transfer portal in the middle of a tournament. It's just like, what are we doing? But that said, Seth, thanks for the time. Oh, by the way, my wife has chimed in because she's watching us right now on the Roku channel. What about Lindsay Gottlieb? And I text her back, like, you mean for women's sports now? She goes, no, as a member of the tribe. So that
member of the tribe. Lindsay Gottlieb, 100%. Kutcher Sports Academy. It all goes back to the Poconos.
It's where you have a fine winter time. Thank you, Seth. Beautiful. Thank you.
Go Blue.
Okay, right. I hear you. That's Seth Davis, everybody.
A Duke fan saying go Blue. How about that?
You know what? Is he a Duke fan?
He went to Duke.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I forgot. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.